beautiful people.
Hello.
Welcome to this week's installment of Coffee Chats. I'm here, Kyra and Dawkins, alongside my illustrious co-host.
Welcome to this week's installment of...
That was weird.
Echo chamber, anyone?
I was like, what just happened? Anyway, that's fine. I digress. So there must be like some sort of internet lag, but I digress. I'm here with my incredible co-host. I mean, we're here together, Mackenzie, Finklea. And this week we have the absolute privilege of interviewing the one, the only Ethan Turer. And he's going to help us navigate the, admittedly, I don't know much about NFTs, which stands for non-fungible tokens, but everything I do know, I predominantly learned from Ethan. Full disclosure. I've read a couple of other articles, but I think that Ethan is a great resource for navigating this space and helping us understand it a bit more, particularly in how we can leverage it as authors. So
yeah, I'm excited to learn from Ethan today because I am admittedly profoundly skeptical of NFTs in general. So I'm really excited to hear and learn from Ethan today. And as always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we will bring them on screen. This is going to be a big learning opportunity today.
Yes, I'm so excited. So without further delay or ado, dun, 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 dun.
Hey. Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me. Excited to be on the show.
We would love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Ethan Turer. I am the author of The Next Gold Rush, The Future of Investing in People. I fell down the crypto rabbit hole back in 2018, and I have not looked back. Kind of like doubled down, actually, by writing a book about cryptocurrency. But yeah, I guess I'm just a curious person, and I like to get my hands dirty and try things. And there's so many cool things happening in like the Web3 space. Like that's the name of like the next evolution of the internet. And so that's where I like to live, is kind of trying new things. Like how can authors utilize Web3 technologies? Like that was my thing. And so last year I experimented with it. This year I'm telling other authors how they can do it. So it's kind of a cool full circle moment for me.
Well, we really appreciate how, again, you kind of got your hands dirty and sort of like navigating and like really playing around with this space. And we really appreciate how you're taking the knowledge that you're acquiring and sharing it with others, because shared knowledge is always better. So our first question for you today is, especially since you were talking about your personal journey, how did you create NFTs for your book specifically?
Yeah, so I'll provide a little backstory, I think. Last year, like almost exactly a year ago, I started my pre-order campaign on Indiegogo. And I remember thinking like, how can I create something that was like unique to offer as like an extra perk for my campaign? And so I was going on this podcast called the Bad Crypto Podcast. And I remember thinking, these people like love NFTs. Like that's their whole thing. All their podcasts are about NFTs. I wonder if there's a way I can like offer their audience an NFT of my book. And so that was like the first question I asked myself. And I ended up creating a perk on Indiegogo that let them buy, like pre-order the NFT. Honestly, this is like really bad. Like I don't recommend doing this if you're like in the NFT space, but it worked for me because I got like, at least I think it was like 18 people that bought the NFT that I pre-ordered. And so it was an interesting experiment, and it worked because that audience like wanted to buy what I was offering. Like there was like a product fit there. And so how I did that is I created it on this platform called Wax. And I can get into like the specifics of that platform, but like the Wax platform is the main one that podcast recommended. So that was the main reason why I went to that platform specifically. But there's like many NFT platforms that you could do this. That was just the one that I started out with.
I think my big question that I'm left with after that is, and we actually do have a banner for it, is how do you introduce or gauge interest in NFTs within book communities? So how did you know, or was it an instinctual feeling, or did you actually like ask, right, that your audience would be interested in this offering?
So my audience wasn't interested in this.
Okay.
That was the first thing I learned, was that like the people that I was educating about cryptocurrency, they didn't know the first thing about how to even buy an NFT. Like my audience wasn't a good fit for this, but the audience of the podcast, they were interested, and they all had like wallets already created on this platform. So I was kind of gearing my book NFT towards that specific audience. Even recently when I gave this like presentation on how to create a book NFT for authors, the authors who had never created a wallet before were not able to buy my NFT. Like it's been like 2 weeks now. No one's still bought it yet. Like it's not an easy process to get started. So really, in terms of gauging interest, you would want to find an existing community within like the crypto space, and then try to target where they are, like find where they live. That's what I would recommend if your audience isn't already a part of this space.
And you might be surprised to find who in your audience is involved. Because I've done some additional research on like people who are into museums, right? A lot of museums are digitizing parts of their collection to turn them into NFTs for people to purchase. Like, so you'd be surprised at what parts of your audience might already be involved.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's another great example. It's like if the museum, let's say, collaborated with a specific NFT platform, then you already know where you should probably first target your launch of your own book NFTs.
I mean, your answer actually like seamlessly leads into our next question of like, what comes first then? The NFTs or the audience? Because I remember during the presentation you gave not so long ago, there are some NFT platforms that are specifically for authors, but that wouldn't be helpful for authors that don't already have audiences that are invested in NFTs, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think the most generic advice is like audience first, right? Like that's the most important thing. But then if you look at like the successful cases of book NFTs, like Gary Vaynerchuk is like the one that I point to. He had like one of the most successful book launches in history. He sold like, I forget, like over 1 million copies in like 24 hours. And that was because he had an NFT launch that was part of the book launch. And so his community was very into NFTs. And the reason they bought his book is because if they bought 12 of his books, they would get one NFT. I actually have a copy of his book. One of the people on Twitter who bought like 300 copies of his book were just giving away copies because they didn't want 300 copies. Like it makes sense, but like that's like his community came first. The NFT was the value that the community wanted, and I think that's the important part. Is like, does your community want this form of value? Like if not, then it's probably not a good fit.
Gary Vaynerchuk's case is a very interesting one in that the chicken egg NFT came first, and then the book came as a very successful result of this NFT community he already built. But what about authors who have a book and then are looking to turn their book into an NFT? I guess I'm also still kind of confused about what that looks like. Is the NFT just like the book cover? Is there more to it than that?
Yeah. So I want to first, Gary Vaynerchuk, like he had the community first. Like it's not the NFT first. So even in his case, like he had created this thing called VFriends, which he's trying to create like the next form of Disney, like creating like drawing his own Disney characters, but like they're his. And so he owns the intellectual property. That community formed, and then he had the book launch for like this thing called Book Games. So like everything he does is like community oriented, and NFT is how he captures the value from his community. Like it's very much community first. And then the second thing that you said was that actually can you ask that question one more time?
How do you turn your book into an NFT?
Right.
Like
okay.
Is it the cover? Is there more to it?
So like this picture that I have here behind me, like this is what like my NFT would look like. It's just the book cover. And I can actually get into like what gives NFTs value, but for the most part, like most NFTs right now are digital art, right? It's like a collectible, like a baseball card. And so that form of scarcity is the main way that people attribute value. Like the highest selling NFT like was $69 million, and it was called like a Beeple, and it was like a collage of all these different pieces of art, and that collage was like deemed very valuable because it was very scarce, right? Like only one person owns it, only one person's made it, and like that's it for all of of existence. And so I think scarcity is what drives value right now. But for authors, like what Gary Vee did is he added access as part of the value to his NFTs. So access meaning access to Gary himself. Like you could actually have a dinner with him if you own a specific NFT. Other access, like access to a conference that he's created called like VCon. So those are the other ways you can add value to your NFT. But it starts off with the like picture, the digital art, but then you can add on top of it.
Mm-hmm. It seems like you already started to answer one of our next questions, but I do kind of want to tack on another inquiry to this. So you started to already talk about like what makes NFTs valuable to book audiences. And I think that you were talking a lot about scarcity and access, particularly access to you as the author. But I guess my question would be, and it kind of goes back to the idea of audiences. If your current audience is not interested in NFTs, would creating an NFT for your book give you access to new audiences, or is that risk not worth it?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I am still trying to figure that one out for myself, so I don't have like a great answer yet. Ask me again in a year, I'll let you know. But I think like the first part though is that I have like this theory on what gives NFTs value, and I already touched on that theory. The first level of like value is like scarcity, like supply and demand. Like that's the one that like pretty much every NFT has. On top of that is the access piece, which is like what I mentioned with Gary Vee. You can have access to the author, access to like an exclusive book club as like another way that you can like tackle access. Like maybe there's a book club that is only made for people who are willing to like be your super fans. So you have like super fan NFTs, and then now they're part of this like cool group. Like that's another way you can do that in NFTs. On top of that, you could have ownership. So something I was experimenting with is, could I sell a quote from my book and like you now own that quote? Like that would be kind of cool to like, because I own 100% of the book. I could divide and conquer like however I want. Like maybe I could sell a chapter or like, like it just really, I think ownership is an interesting piece of this because there's still not a lot of like data on like how you could divide ownership of a book. Like usually that doesn't happen. And then the last like most valuable thing that you can add to an NFT is royalties. So, as authors, we get royalties when people buy our books. You could theoretically give a portion of your royalties, and then now you have an ROI associated with the NFT, so people can actually make a return if they invest in your book NFT.
And as a super quick follow-up question to what you just said, particularly on the royalty component, or the fact, like the reason why you're able to have this flexibility in creating NFTs for your book and experimenting with ownership, like from your community, is the fact that you own all the rights yourself. So would you say that that NFTs could be an incentive for authors to consider the more independent hybrid space?
Yeah, actually, a lot of like traditional people that have worked with traditional publishers, like they can't do these experiments because they don't own their book. So like the freedom that I have to like basically give my book away if I wanted to, like that's the same freedom that you would need to like experiment with the NFT space. So I don't see a lot of publishers like Penguin or whatever being like, yeah, like let's go into the NFT space because it's too risky for them from like a liability standpoint. So they would never sign off on it. You really need to be like independent or like, the program that we all came out of, like that would be the like necessary step in order to even create your own book NFT.
Do audiences often see the value in the investment piece of NFTs?
It really depends on your audience. Like I'm like biased and say yes, but it's some people don't quite understand how the technology works. And I think that the understanding piece is where you lose a lot of your audience. Like if they already understand how cryptocurrencies work, they already own other NFTs, they're probably more likely going to see the value in what you're creating as an author. If you as an author have to educate your audience on what an NFT is, it may may get lost on them. Like I don't know if it is the best fit yet. It's still very early. Like NFTs just started in like 2017, 2018, and it wasn't until like the pandemic where they became more popular. Like you just see them on the news all the time. So we're not there yet. Like we're still in the early adopter phase. So I wouldn't like jump on board the NFT train unless you're willing to like make mistakes and, you know,
Yeah.
it's not for everyone.
What do you think is I guess not even think. What is the kind of like bottom line price for NFTs? Because a lot of the ones I've seen sell for thousands, tens of thousands, millions of dollars. But are there NFTs out there like, could you put your book up and be like $2? Why would you? But $2, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a more complicated question than you may have realized. So, like, it really depends on a lot of things, like the specific platform that you're creating the NFT on. Like, for instance, OpenSea is the like most popular NFT platform, and it's on the Ethereum blockchain. And right now, the problem with the Ethereum blockchain is that it's very expensive to use. So, like, there's this thing called gas fees, which is like a transaction cost, and that it's cost like at least $100 minimum right now to do anything on Ethereum. And so, if you're minting, like creating an NFT on like OpenSea, you as an author have to pay like $100 just to start off in that specific blockchain. And so what's happening is a lot of people maybe don't understand that those are the like inherent costs in doing this. And so they are going to lose money unless they at least sell like for $100. Like, so if you don't at least break even, you're going to be losing money. The reason I chose Wax is because they don't have the same like transaction costs, and so it cost me like $20 to create like the 18 NFTs, so that my costs were really low. And so just by selling like them, I think I sold them for like $10 each. I made my money back by selling one, like, or one or two. So like it really worked out better because I used a different blockchain that was more efficient, didn't cost as much. But the downside of that is it's a smaller network. So here's the other piece of this puzzle is that, you know, there's network effects that play into cryptocurrency. So if you have like Ethereum, which is like the second most popular cryptocurrency, you have a wider audience that could like buy your NFT. And so that could drive the price up over time. But if you have a smaller audience, even if one person buys it, if no one's buying it from that person, then your resale value is lower. And so it's like a catch-22 of like, well, do you want to have the higher cost up front and maybe make it back in the long run? Or do you want lower costs and then like not really make a lot of money in the long run? Like that's why it's complicated. I don't know if I have the right answer.
No, that was a really helpful answer. It sounds a little risky, truthfully.
Oh yeah, totally. Like that, even when I wrote a book about this, like I'm making mistakes all the time. I'm not an expert, but I've done the research, and I'm still like I still fall into like scams, and like it's the Wild West of crypto right now. It's not regulated. There's no insurance, so if you lose anything, like you're basically like anything you buy, it's like a gamble, like a casino. So it is very risky. I wrote a whole chapter called "The Wild West of Crypto" because it's so risky, and I wanted to make sure my readers were informed how risky it actually is.
To that end, is it best for authors to try to understand NFTs for themselves by reading things and resources that you recommend, like your book, for example? Or is it worth hiring consultants and experts?
I mean, maybe both.
Why not both?
Yeah, right.
Both.
Like someone like is like paid me to like do research on their behalf, and I think the question, like when you're first starting out, is do you even know what the right questions are to ask, right? Because I think a lot of this is like it's so new to so many people. Even if you're going to an expert to tell you what to think, you might not even know how to ask the expert the right questions yourself to like know if you're making a good decision. Like, so that I think part of this is educating yourself just so that you know like the industry that you're in. And then once you get like past a certain level of, okay, I know how like blockchain works, I kind of understand like what are the top NFT platforms. Then you like build like even if you create your own NFT, like you're so much further ahead because you've done the research. And
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent of like trying it yourself first before you like pay someone else to do it, because you're not even gonna know if they're doing a good job unless you try it yourself first.
No, I think that's a very, I mean, it's helpful to your point to try to do at least aspects of it yourself first, because then when you approach experts, you at least have some sort of understanding of what they're going to do. And then you're not in the world of like the wild, wild west of crypto and potential scams. You don't want to hire an expert for way more than they're actually worth and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's messy out there. But I guess another quick follow-up question I have that is a little bit niche. So earlier on, you mentioned that much of the NFT space seems to predominantly be in digital art, but but increasingly I'm seeing something where people can invest in like I guess non-digital things virtually. Like I've seen people invest in like old like masterpieces, and they own like partially like have a share in a piece of artwork that isn't digital. So do you think that NFTs will can provide an avenue or potentially an avenue for like investment in non-digital entities, or is the goal, or have you seen it become increasingly more digital, especially since authors have multiple editions of their books? Like can it be in all of the formats, I guess?
Yeah, I feel like the best way I can answer your question is like taking like two steps back and just like talking about what is an NFT, because that is like the fundamental question I think you're asking, because
Right.
it's like NFT stands for non-fungible token, but what does it actually mean, right? It's kind of a digital collectible, but at the heart of it, it's a unique cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, like if I own one Bitcoin, I can change them for another one and it's going to be the same value. But for an NFT, it's different. It's like trying to exchange like, the Mona Lisa for like you know, a different Picasso painting. Like they're not going to hold the same value because they're unique, right? They have special like serial numbers that are associated with them. And so every single NFT is like a very different thing. And so they're not interchangeable at all. And to that point, they're also, just a way to capture like the value of an asset. So the asset could be art, right? Which is like the main form of, NFTs right now is like digital art. But also to your point, Kyra, like I could see in the future, like some startups already working on this. You could own the like deed of your house, could be connected on a blockchain that is an NFT, and so you can track the ownership of the house on the blockchain, and that is like where we're headed. Is like the physical assets are connected to a blockchain that is an NFT, but we're just in the early phases of this. And so right now, the thing that's become the most popular is like digital art, music, NFTs, like things that are like more entrepreneurial in nature. And then eventually, when they become more mainstream, you'll start to see like you can buy your car, like the pink slip of your car will be on the blockchain. Like that. That's where we're headed. It's going to take like maybe a decade to get there.
Oh wow. So I guess another question that I have, because we were talking a little bit earlier about audiences, and I guess like Gary Vaynerchuk, for example, and your book kind of fall a little bit more into so like the actual books or content themselves kind of lend to people that are already interested in or invested in knowing a bit more about the space. So I mean, have you seen like books of other genres like try to address NFTs? And if so, have you seen them operate within given guidelines? Or does it seem like, regardless of what the NFT is, it's about narrowing it down to that specific audience's desires as much as possible?
So what I've seen that like works is that like there's this example called Bookcoin, and they partnered with the guy who wrote the subtle art of not giving an F. I don't know if I can swear on this. But they partner with
Mark Manson.
Mark Manson. Thank you. So he released like a exclusive number of NFTs that are related to his book for that audience. And so people buy those because they want like that limited, like, you know, like there's books that have like limited edition status. Like they're trying to do that in the NFT world. And so I think that what works right now is being like already famous, like having people that already see you as valuable, and then your community kind of follows that. Like it's like clout chasing. Have you heard of that? So I think that's like right now NFTs, if you don't already have a lot of clout, it's going to be hard to convince people that your NFTs are like worth the investment. And so if your community isn't already in the NFT space and you're not like a mega influencer or like, have this credibility already connected to your brand, then it's going to be hard to get people interested in what you're creating. And so that's what I've found is that I can create NFTs, but doesn't mean anyone's going to buy them. So the only success I've had was when I was like partnering with another podcast or another entity that was like kind of collaborating with my book. And so I think that's where the secret sauce is for like new authors, is to find a platform that will like feature you or endorse you and like help you make their community interested in what you're doing. So that collaboration is what you need to be successful. Don't do it by yourself unless you're already, like a Gary Vaynerchuk person. That would be my advice.
Yeah, Mark's a great example in looking at the quick link that I just dropped of his collection on Bookcoin. I think he's a much more attainable example for authors currently listening, because Gary Vaynerchuk's kind of an outlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like even like Bookcoin, they reach out to him. Like there was a lot of collaboration that went into building like momentum and hype around it. Like you need all of those pieces for it to be a success. And so if you're not willing to like find those niche groups that want to partner with you, like it's probably going to be harder to be successful.
It's like writing a book. Like if you're going to do it big, build the audience, market the book, then launch it. Don't just, do it and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, my whole thing is like educating people on crypto. So I feel like at the end of the day, just doing this, like there's value to my audience because I can tell them how to create a book as an NFT, even if like it didn't sell that well. But I think if you do want to be successful, like the best ways are like kind of like how Mark Manson did. You partner with a platform that will feature you and make their audience your audience. Like you need that collaboration.
Yeah.
So I guess a follow-up question that I have, because it admittedly, like you mentioned earlier on, that NFTs and just the cryptocurrency world is like in its infancy and development. So I guess I'm just, in the event that I want to try to explain the current state of it to someone else, because it sort of sounds like now that, how earlier on you mentioned like cloud chasing. I feel like it's more complicated than that, but it seems like NFT is a space where people have access to, again, non-fungible tokens, which are like discrete, like collectible items. Like, do people like show off what's in their wallet? And it's kind of like that. Like, here are my NFTs. Like, it seems like a very, very like sophisticated form of like being a collector. Would that be like a helpful metaphor, or is that like minimizing it too much?
I mean, it is it's, like the baseball card example, like
exactly
when you have like these rare baseball cards or Pokemon cards, like for me it was Pokemon. You want to show it off to your friends. You want people to like be like, ooh, ah, right? And so you see that on Twitter, there's this whole thing called the Bored Ape Yacht Club, and it's just pictures of monkeys. Like it doesn't like seem valuable to me like on the surface, but to this community, it's like extremely valuable. And so they changed their profile pictures on Twitter to be the NFT that they bought, right? And then Twitter verified it by turning it into a hexagon, so you know that they're legit. So it becomes like part of your brand and digital identity, the NFTs that you own. And then it's kind of like a Lamborghini where, you just want to show it off to everyone. And it's a way to like show your wealth and all. Like like a status, like you're showing off your status, like that. That's what NFTs are kind of right now. That's why I said clout chasing earlier.
Mm-hmm. And as a quick follow up to that, like, will there be a point where like NFTs so like accrue interest or become like more valuable, and you could sell the ones that you have for more currency, cryptocurrency?
Yeah.
Like, is that like, is it like a trading sort of entity too, or?
Yeah. So the main reason why I think authors should try this at least is because every time someone resells their NFT, they get a royalty. It's usually like around 10%. So it's now a form of passive revenue that like could last for your whole lifetime theoretically. And so instead of Amazon, taking a huge cut and then that's the end of the transaction, now you have a way for someone to buy your NFT, get access to your book, and then someone else could buy it from them, and you continue to make money every time it's purchased. So you get 10% of the higher purchase price. So it becomes like a lucrative way to make money if you know how to do it, and if people find it valuable in the long run. Those are some big ifs. Like, I'm not guaranteeing that this will happen for you, but like that's also been the case with like Jack Dorsey's tweet. Like, someone paid like millions of dollars. I think it was like around $50 million, and then they put it on open auction, and it was like went on auction for like $200. like like there's no guarantee that NFTs are going to retain their value. And so that's part of the risk that Mackenzie was kind of alluding to earlier, is that this is so new. Even like the NFT platforms that you create on may not last in the long run. Like, maybe everyone will leave and then you'll just have an NFT on a blockchain that no one uses. Like, that's a very real possibility, which is why it's hard to know where to tell people. Like, the best guess is to use like OpenSea, but like I said, like there's trade-offs because it's so expensive. Like, you really need to understand it in order to make the right decision. And unless you understand it, all you're doing is like speculating on what will work. And I think everyone is speculating, like, to an extent. But we're just trying to make the best informed speculation we can.
So it really does seem to be a case by case thing for each author as to whether or not the juice is worth the squeeze.
Yeah,
That
I've talked to a
royalty
few.
thing, though, that's nice, though. That's an interesting concept, because when you sell a book, you get, even if you're self-published, wherever it's distributed, you get paid for it that first time. But then someone reads it, donates it to the local used bookstore. And this is the case for me. I walked in the other day and they were like, hey, every time someone donates your book, I sell it like within the week. And I'm like, that's fantastic. But I don't see anything from that sale because the book's already been bought and sold once. But so that's interesting for then your potential book NFT. For every time it is sold, shared, traded, you see a royalty. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that was the main reason I thought it would be worth trying. Like I said, I don't have resale value yet. maybe in 10 years, if people are like, oh, that was an interesting book, I want to like find that NFT he created during his pre-order campaign, like maybe then it'll be valuable. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. It's kind of like how collector's items like become more worthwhile with time. I could see that happening.
Yeah.
So, what resources, you being the person who's done a ton of research on this and has looked in many a place, what resources would you recommend to authors who want to do more research on NFTs?
So, like, my book is not about NFTs at all, so I can't even recommend that. So I'd first start off with like understanding cryptocurrency, though. I do think that's important, because if you don't understand blockchain, like, and why NFTs even exist, you're probably not going to like understand why you should even create NFTs. So there are a lot of great like YouTube videos that I relied on, like learning the basics, like Bitcoin 101, Crypto KC. Like, if you just like Google like, cryptocurrency for beginners, like there's lots of resources there. In terms of NFTs, though, I would say that every NFT platform has like guides that are useful. So, like, take OpenSea, for example. Like, they have an education section on their website that will like hopefully answer a lot of the questions that you're having. So every platform has to deal with educating new people, and so they are going to have the best resources in terms of using their platforms and understanding NFTs. So, definitely check out like the NFT marketplace, like OpenSea. Another example is like Charged Particles, and they have like videos on how it works, how to create one. Like that would be where I would start. If you have more specific questions, like I could try to help you. Like definitely reach out to me. I feel like the way that I give back to this community is by like trying to help people understand it, see if it's a good fit for them or not. I've talked to a lot of authors already about book NFTs, so it's been like an interesting experience. I don't think it's for everyone, but everything is pretty much out there in terms of resources. You just have to like make sure you find the right one that works for you. So kind of like the more you expose yourself to all of these terminology, the more you'll be able to ask the right questions. Like that's the crypto rabbit hole in a nutshell. That's how I was able to write a book about it. It was just, okay, I don't understand this. Who do I need to talk to explain it to me? Okay, I understand a little bit more. Now I know what to Google to like, you just continue that rabbit hole process.
I mean, I think acknowledging aspects of it being a rabbit hole is helpful because that just sort of goes to show that your knowledge is like builds as you like go along, so you don't feel like you have to be inundated with a whole bunch of information before you're equipped to do anything. Like knowing that you get to learn as you go is encouraging. It's still stressful, but it's encouraging. It's not like the same thing as being a neurosurgeon, like you see what I'm saying? But I guess
what? It's not?
It's not. I guess the next question I have for you that kind of segues into, so this will be like the last formal question we have for you. And I'm going to pull up the banner to remind our audience that they can drop a question inside of the chat should they have any. But a quick question I have for you is, since you talked about rabbit holes, learning as you go, what is one big lesson that you've learned thus far in your NFT journey?
That's a good question.
I think the biggest lesson was that, like the saying, build it and they will come. Like that doesn't really exist. But it is interesting. If you build it and no one comes, it's still like valuable. So even though you may not have the audience yet, like you may not have like the community, if you start building something and talking about it, that will lead you to other people building things and talking about it, which will help you find the communities that will buy it. So it's like, not if you build it, they will come. It's like, if you build it, you will know where to look for them. And then they will come because you've already have experience. Like, it's like there's extra steps, but like, I wouldn't be, my biggest takeaway is don't be afraid to just try it and see if it works for you and continue learning, because everyone in this space is constantly learning. Like, it's still growing and changing like the industry so quickly that even the cryptocurrency leaders who I interviewed for my book, they admit that they don't know everything. Like it's very much like everyone is learning together. And so you're more likely to find people that want to help you and collaborate with you because we all are like benefiting from this growing industry. So don't be afraid to try, and don't be afraid to ask for help and guidance and collaboration.
Well, look at you jumping the gun on our final question, which is just any parting words of wisdom that you have for people watching now or later. Anything you want to tack on to what you just said.
So I started in 2018, right? It was when Bitcoin had like reached a bubble of $20,000. It was in the news everywhere. We're like, wow, it's like Bitcoin, this thing that was like worthless. Why is it like worth $20,000? Now it's like reached a height of like over 60,000. So I think the reason why cryptocurrency becomes popular is because of this bubbling. Like I write about this in my book because I find it fascinating that as people, we're constantly trying to find the next thing, right? My book is called The Next Gold Rush because I realize people are constantly looking for the next big like opportunity. I think that that opportunity is in the cryptocurrency space, but like the big but is that no one knows for sure what it's going to be. Like it's not for sure if it's Bitcoin, if it's Ethereum, if it's some like niche project that hasn't even been created yet. Like we're still not sure what the big opportunity really is. And so if you're starting in the crypto space, you're beginning your journey, just realize that everyone's going to be like shilling you their thing, but no one really knows if it's going to be the thing that actually is the next big thing. Like that, I think understanding that you're just going to meet a lot of people that are like wanting to like build the bubble, but not necessarily have the project that is like worth the value it's creating. Does that make sense? Like that's what a bubble is. It's like the the value or the price of the thing far surpasses the actual value. Mm-hmm. And cryptocurrency is built for bubbling. Like that's what's happening all the time. And so you have these spectacular increases and decreases in price because everyone's like following what their friends are doing and we're all greedy SOBs. So just be conscious that, whether it's, someone's idea they're working on or it's Bitcoin or whatever it is, everyone's going to try to convince you it's the next big thing. Don't listen to any of them. Decide for yourself based off of like educated like research. And then like once you have like an informed opinion, you'll be more likely to be like, okay, Bitcoin might actually have some merit. Don't just invest because someone tells you to. That's like my last piece of advice.
That's good advice. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time today, Ethan.
Yeah. Oh, and before like we close, it has to be said that we're all color coordinated inadvertently. It just has to be said. So like I appreciate that immensely. But as an aside, much more importantly to Mackenzie, what Mackenzie just said, thank you so much for being here. I learned a lot. I still don't know much about the space, but again, most of what I know, I learned from you, like through the presentations you've done and through this talk today. And I really appreciate your honesty in telling people like there is so much exploration still happening in this space, and you're just sort of further along that exploration journey and sharing the knowledge that you have. So thank you again.
And if you want to reach out to Ethan at all, take a quick pause here and look at all of the different things he has available and places where you can find him down below next to his face.
Yeah, all of the ways to connect. Anyways, thank you so much for having me on. I learned so much from both of you when I went through the program. So I wouldn't be where I'm at right now talking to you if it wasn't for how you educated me. So, I feel like we're just kind of doing this like full circle moment, but I would love to help you, Mackenzie. Like if you're thinking about turning your book like into an NFT and collaborating with museums, like I think that every new author that does something in this space, like it just adds to the whole industry. And that's what you see is that a lot of people are open to collaboration because they realize that we need people like you, Mackenzie, that are willing to try and then bring your audience and like your connections and your niche, book topic into this space. Like cryptocurrency is for everyone. It just doesn't feel like that yet because it's so new. I feel like it will be part of like everyday life in the future.
Something to think about. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you so much. Well, beautiful people, that was another very successful and informative coffee chat. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks so much to Ethan. Thanks so much to the incredible Mackenzie Finklea, of course. And if you guys have any questions or you have a topic that you want us to discuss, please drop it in the comments below. We check those. We do a lot of cool topic ideas from you guys. And of course, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us as well, as indicated in the little, what is it called?
The ticker.
Like ticker? Yes, ticker below. And yeah, again, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for your space. I hope you're enjoying a beverage of your choice wherever you are in the world. And yeah, thank you.
See, what do we have to look forward to next?
Yes, next week we have a coffee chat with the incredible Jen Marr because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Honestly, we should always be aware of mental health, but especially during May, Mental Health Awareness Month. We're going to be talking to Jen about how, as authors, we can be intentional about fostering mental health and wellness in our author communities. So,
Yay.
I know, right? That'll be a fun one.
It's going to be so good. Yeah. So important.
Mm-hmm. So without further ado, beautiful people, have a wonderful rest of your days, nights, evenings, wherever you are in the world.
Bye. See you next time.